Hi, welcome to the Deep End. My name doesn't matter. Let's dive in. In Romans chapter 2, there's a shift that we want you to notice as you read. You see at the end of chapter 1, it ends with, they know the righteous decrees of God, that those who practice such things deserve to die. They not only do them, but give hearty approval to those who practice them. And then it shifts from they to you. Right away in chapter 2, verse 1, it says, therefore, you have no excuse, O man, every one of you who judges. In the first couple verses there, he's going to talk about how when you judge other people and you suppose that you are righteous, that your unrighteousness is actually exposed before him. Chapter 2, verses 1 through 5 begins to explain that when you judge other people for doing wrong, you actually end up judging yourself because the wickedness you see in them is also prevalent in you. And then there's a warning. He will render to each one's account according to his works, there in verse 6. All men are wicked, and God judges by the same measure based on the law of God. Now, the argument would immediately pop up, what about those who have sinned without the law? Then Paul launches into a natural law argument in verses 12 through 16, explaining that even the Gentile who doesn't have the law becomes a law to himself when he declares something as good or evil on his own. Naturally, Gentiles are guilty of breaking the law, and the Jews are guilty of breaking the law, and you personally are guilty of breaking the law. So after establishing that Gentiles are equally guilty of breaking the law, he turns his focus back to the Jews and says, you call yourself a Jew, but rely on the law and boast in God and know his will and approve of what is excellent because you are instructed from the law. And if you are sure that you yourself are a guide to the blind, a light to those who are in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of children, having the law and the embodiment of knowledge of truth. So he lays out all these things. This is who you are as Jews. And then he says, you then who teach others, do you not teach yourself? While you preach against stealing, do you steal? You who say one must not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? All the way through verse 24, Paul explains that when you have a law or you have knowledge of the truth and you fail to live up to that truth, in fact, you end up blaspheming God because your wickedness becomes more prevalent than your obedience. Finally, chapter 2 ends with this paragraph there in verses 25 through 29 in which he says, listen, it's not enough just to be a Jewish person outward or religious outwardly or to have the laws or to know the right things, but your heart must be transformed. You must be circumcised inward, have the inward circumcision of the heart in order to be saved, in order to be rescued from your own sins. And he explains that no one is able to be rescued just by being religious enough. In other words, all of chapter 2 boils down to this idea that you can't be religious enough to be saved. It's the plea of the book of Romans that something greater would take place in you, that your heart would be transformed and that you would become one of Christ's followers. And in Christ doing the righteousness for you and obeying the law for you, you would be able to be transformed into his image and be saved from the wrath of God, because that wrath would be poured out on Jesus Christ, whom you have trusted in for salvation. Thanks for joining me. Go to the Word.